Maya Johnson, 21 years old, was a force of nature, a sociology student with an unshakable sense of justice. Her kinky, deep black hair was often tied in a high bun or elaborate braids, but always with a few rebellious strands framing her face with strong, expressive features. Her eyes, a dark, almost black-brown, carried the intensity of someone who has seen too much and the determination of someone who refuses to accept the status quo. Her skin, a rich chocolate tone, contrasted with the vibrant colors of the clothes she often wore, a reflection of her vibrant personality and her refusal to fade into the background. Although not tall, her upright posture and the way she occupied space conveyed an imposing presence, that of someone who was not afraid to be heard. Morally, Maya was guided by a strict ethical code, forged in years of personal experiences and observations of injustices around her. She believed in radical equality and the need to dismantle oppressive systems. For her, passivity was a form of complicity, and true change would only come through direct confrontation and collective action. Her morality was not flexible. She saw the world in terms of right and wrong when it came to human rights and dignity. Raised in a family that always encouraged her to fight for what she believed in, Maya felt a deep sense of responsibility towards her community and towards those who could not speak for themselves. She did not seek conciliation at all costs, especially when it meant compromising fundamental principles of justice. Psychologically, Maya was a born strategist, with a sharp and analytical mind. She processed information quickly, connecting dots and identifying patterns of discrimination where others saw only isolated incidents. Her intelligence was evident in her oratory, capable of articulating complex arguments with clarity and passion, inspiring those around her. However, behind her facade of strength and determination, there was a layer of exhaustion. The weight of constantly being the voice, the leader, the person carrying the burden of the fight was immense. She felt the frustration and anger of her community, and this propelled her, but also wore her down. With every racist graffiti, every verbal aggression, every attempt by the administration to minimize the facts, Maya's determination solidified, but also deepened the wound of constantly being reminded that for some, her existence was a threat. She was ready for battle, but longed for a world where the fight was no longer necessary. Daniel Rodriguez, 22 years old, was a political science student with an unshakable belief in the power of dialogue and diplomacy. His dark brown hair, always neatly trimmed, and his expressive hazel eyes reflected a seriousness and thoughtfulness uncommon for his age. His fair skin with a slight tan and his athletic build, the result of years of playing soccer, gave him an approachable and trustworthy appearance. He dressed practically and casually, but always with a touch of discreet elegance, preferring polo shirts and well-fitting jeans. Daniel was the kind of person who listened more than he spoke, but when he did speak, his words were carefully chosen and full of meaning. Morally, Daniel was an idealistic pragmatist. He shared Maya's indignation at injustices, but believed that lasting change would come through building bridges, not burning them. His morality was guided by the search for solutions that could benefit everyone, even if it required concessions and patience. He understood the anger and frustration of his community, but feared that radicalization could alienate potential allies and hinder progress. Raised in a family that always encouraged him to fight for what he believed in, Daniel felt a deep sense of responsibility towards her community and towards those who could not speak for themselves. He did not seek conciliation at all costs, especially when it meant compromising fundamental principles of justice. Psychologically, Daniel was a born mediator. His mind was organized and logical, capable of analyzing complex situations from different angles and identifying common ground where others saw only divisions. He was an attentive, empathetic, and patient listener, qualities that made him a confidant and advisor to many of his peers. However, this incessant pursuit of conciliation also left him in a delicate position. He often found himself caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to balance demands for radical justice with the need to maintain peace and dialogue. The pressure of being the voice of reason in a polarized environment was immense, and he felt the weight of the responsibility to try and unite a fragmented community. He believed that true strength lay in the ability to dialogue, even with those who thought differently, and was determined to prove that change could be achieved without violent confrontations.
Chadwick "Chad" Thompson, 23 years old, was the epitome of privilege and arrogance. His blonde hair, always perfectly combed, and his blue eyes, cold and calculating, conveyed a sense of innate superiority. His fair, almost pale skin and his robust physique, the result of intense workouts at the university gym, gave him an aura of untouchability. He dressed in designer clothes, always impeccable, a testament to his wealth and his disdain for anything less than first-rate. Chad was the son of an influential university donor, and his presence on campus was marked by a sense that the rules did not apply to him. Morally, Chad was a convinced egoist, with a worldview distorted by privilege and a lack of empathy. He believed that the world operated on merit, and that his position was a reflection of his own superiority, rather than inherited advantages. For him, complaints about racism were victimhood and exaggeration, a way to seek attention or gain undue advantages. His morality was flexible, shaped by his own interests and convenience. He saw no problem in using his influence to silence dissenting voices or to protect his friends, even if it meant harming others. Raised in an environment where his opinions were always validated and his actions rarely questioned, Chad developed a deep aversion to any form of criticism or challenge to his authority. Psychologically, Chad was a narcissist with a superiority complex. His mind was closed to new ideas, especially those that challenged his worldview. He was incapable of recognizing his own prejudices, projecting his insecurities and frustrations onto others. The anger of Black and Latino students was for him a personal affront, a threat to his comfort zone and his status. He reveled in provoking and humiliating those he considered inferior, finding pleasure in the reaction of pain and indignation that his words and actions caused. The idea that he could be part of the problem was unthinkable. In his mind, he was the victim of a cancel culture and an exaggerated political correctness. Chad was the kind of antagonist who, with his arrogance and lack of remorse, aroused the anger and frustration of readers, serving as a vivid reminder of the forces that oppose justice and equality in the divided city. Westwood University, a bastion of knowledge and progress, was, for many, a refuge. Its well-manicured lawns, historic buildings, and the promise of a bright future attracted students from all over the world. However, beneath this facade of excellence, a current of racial tension simmered, ready to explode. In recent months, isolated incidents began to accumulate. Racist graffiti in Black student dorms, verbal aggressions directed at Latino students in common areas, and the growing feeling that the university, which prided itself on its diversity, was failing to protect its minority students. The university administration, led by Dean Thompson, Chad's father, seemed more concerned with maintaining the institution's image than with addressing the root of the problem. Official communications minimized the incidents, classifying them as isolated acts of vandalism or unfortunate misunderstandings. The rhetoric was one of conciliation and unity, but the actions were of inaction.
Counselors were made available, dialogue groups were formed, but no concrete measures were taken to punish the aggressors or to create a truly safe and inclusive environment. This silence, this passivity, was perceived by Black and Latino students not as neutrality, but as complicity, a tacit validation of the racism they faced daily. Frustration grew, and patience, once abundant, began to run out. It was only a matter of time until indignation turned into action, and the city, once divided by invisible lines, became a stage for open confrontation.
The inaction of the Westwood University administration served as a catalyst, transforming latent frustration into an organized movement. Maya Johnson, with her sharp oratory and unshakable passion, emerged as one of the main voices. She and a group of Black and Latino students founded the Student Justice Alliance, SJA, an organization dedicated to demanding concrete changes. Nightly meetings in empty classrooms became crowded assemblies, where experiences of discrimination were shared and protest strategies were debated. Posters with phrases like "Our lives matter here" and "No more institutional racism" began to pop up on campus hallways and bulletin boards. The protests began peacefully. Sit-ins at the dean's office, silent marches across campus, and the distribution of flyers detailing incidents of discrimination. Daniel Rodriguez, while supporting the SJA's cause, often found himself in a dilemma. He participated in meetings, offered his expertise in political science to formulate more structured proposals, but always defended the importance of dialogue with the administration. We need to show them that we are reasonable, that we want solutions, not just confrontations, he argued, often to the frustration of Maya, who saw conciliation as a distraction from the urgency of the situation. They will only listen to us when they feel the pressure, Daniel. History shows us that, she retorted, her eyes fixed on the vision of radical change. As tension mounted, Chad Thompson and his circle of friends seemed to revel in the chaos. For them, the protests were a spectacle, an annoying inconvenience. Chad was often seen in groups, laughing and making derogatory comments about the protesters. On one occasion, he was caught spray painting an offensive phrase on one of the SJA's posters, an act that, although vehemently denied by him and minimized by the administration as a bad joke, further inflamed tempers. His presence, his superior attitude, and the impunity with which he acted were a constant reminder of the power disparity and veiled racism that permeated the university. He was the personification of the anger simmering in the student community, an easy target for accumulated frustration. The administration, in turn, continued to adopt a stance of denial and minimization. Dean Thompson, in public statements, praised the students' passion but reiterated the need to maintain order and respect the institution's rules. Palliative measures such as the creation of a diversity committee with members of the administration itself and the promise of more sensitivity training were seen by the SJA as mere smokescreens. With each failed attempt at appeasement, Maya's conviction that the university would only respond to direct pressure grew stronger. The university town, once a refuge, was becoming an ideological battlefield where the voices of reason and conciliation struggled to be heard amidst the growing clamor for justice and the oppressive shadow of privilege. The Student Justice Alliance's patience finally ran out. After weeks of ignored peaceful protests and the continuous minimization of racist incidents by the administration, Maya and the SJA leaders decided on a more drastic action: the occupation of the dean's office building. The date was set, the strategy outlined, and the news spread like wildfire across social media. The idea was to force the administration to publicly address and commit to the students' demands, which included the expulsion of the aggressors, the implementation of an anti-racist curriculum,
and the creation of a student council with decision-making power on diversity issues. On the morning of the occupation, the campus was in an uproar. Hundreds of students, SJA supporters, gathered in front of the dean's office building. Maya was on the front lines, her voice amplified by a megaphone, echoing the movement's demands. Daniel, though apprehensive about the escalation, was by her side, trying to ensure that the action remained peaceful and that the students were safe. Campus security, reinforced by hired guards and the veiled presence of some city police officers, formed a barrier in front of the building's doors, their faces tense and their eyes fixed on the crowd. Confrontation was inevitable. The crowd, driven by passion and frustration, began to push against the security line. Shouts of "Our lives matter here" and "No more institutional racism" mingled with security warnings for students to back off. It was then that Chad Thompson appeared, not as a protester, but as a provocateur. He was at the edge of the crowd, filming with a cell phone and shouting racist insults at the Black and Latino students. His presence was a powder keg, and the spark came when he threw an empty water bottle at Maya, hitting her shoulder. The reaction was immediate. The anger, contained for so long, exploded. Some students advanced towards Chad, while others tried to break through the security barrier. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. The security guards, in a panic, began to use batons and pepper spray. Cries of pain and despair filled the air. Maya, despite the pain in her shoulder, tried to calm the crowd, but it was too late. Daniel, seeing the violence spread, tried to protect the most vulnerable students, but was pushed and fell to the ground. Chaos reigned. Amidst the confusion, one of the security guards, perhaps out of nervousness or excessive force, pushed a student who was filming the scene. Her cell phone fell and broke. The image of the student, crying and with her face red from pepper spray, was the breaking point. The scene was captured by other cell phones and quickly spread across social media, turning the confrontation into a national scandal. Westwood University, once a bastion of knowledge, was now the epicenter of a crisis that exposed its deep divisions and its failure to protect its own students. The confrontation was not just between students and security. It was a confrontation between truth and denial, between justice and privilege, and the university city would never be the same. The video of the confrontation at the dean's office went viral, exposing the brutality of campus security and the inaction of the Westwood University administration to the world. The repercussions were immediate and overwhelming. Alumni, renowned academics, civil rights activists, and the national media turned their eyes to Westwood, demanding answers. The pressure became unbearable for Dean Thompson, who, amidst a growing scandal and threats of funding cuts, was forced to resign. His departure, though late, was a relief for the student community and a sign that the SJA's fight had not been in vain. With the dean's resignation, the university appointed an independent commission to investigate the incidents of racism and the confrontation at the dean's office. Maya Johnson, now a national figure in the fight for racial justice, was invited to join the commission, ensuring that the students' voices would be heard. Daniel Rodriguez, with his mediation skills, played a crucial role in facilitating dialogue among the different groups within the university community. The meetings were tense, charged with emotion and years of resentment. Black and Latino students shared their stories of pain and discrimination, while some white students, previously oblivious to the reality of racism, began to confront their own privileges and prejudices. Chad Thompson, in turn, faced the consequences of his actions. Public pressure and the university's internal investigation resulted in his expulsion. Although he and his family tried to minimize what happened, the exposure of his racist and provocative behavior made him a figure of repudiation. a vivid reminder of the kind of mentality that the university and society needed to eradicate. The path to healing and reconciliation was arduous. The university implemented a new curriculum that included mandatory courses on racial history and social justice. Mentorship programs for minority students were expanded, and campus security underwent rigorous training in cultural sensitivity and conflict de-escalation. The Student Justice Alliance, now with a permanent seat on the University Council, continued to monitor policies and ensure that promises were kept. For Maya and Daniel, the fight was far from over, but a new dawn had arrived at Westwood University. The city, once divided by invisible lines of prejudice and privilege, was beginning to rebuild brick by brick through dialogue, empathy, and a commitment to justice. Westwood's story became an example, a reminder that even in the depths of division, the hope for a more inclusive and equitable future can flourish, driven by the courage of those who refuse to remain silent.